Hey, it's Rooted Black Girls with Farah and Afnan. Representing everyday Black millennial women of multiple faiths, cultures, and voting suppressive tactics. F you, Fulton County. You had me waiting for 2 hours.
I need 4 hours. 4 freaking hours.
Yeah, oh man. But, last week's episode, we did speak about Breonna Taylor, and our good sis here, Afnan, has a PSA for all of y'all.
Listen, if you are listening to this and you are Black, okay, if you're a female, if you're a human being, and the damn dog and cat, if they're listening, okay? Like, all of us should be invested in the fact Breonna Taylor's murderers still have not been brought to justice. Like, can we talk about that for like a hot second? Like,
yeah, we need to, honestly, we need to say this. Our platform is small, alhamdulillah, we're humble about it, but every single time that we're doing an episode, it's going to be like a say her name episode. Honestly, until we receive justice in this case. It's been 3 months. It's been 3 months. She, at the beginning of COVID, I think it was March 13th, she was sleeping. I saw a tweet where a white woman tweeted like, hey, maybe if you guys followed the rules, you wouldn't be, killed by police. And someone was like, Breonna Taylor was sleeping. Like, what laws can you actively be breaking while asleep in your own home?
Oh my God. The other thing, the thing that re-infuriated me was the police report being completely blank, no injuries listed. And I'm just like, and still no outrage? I don't know.
So as we received more strides towards receiving justice for our sister Breonna Taylor, last week we did get some positive news, if you will, that in the city of Louisville, they passed a no-knock warrant bill. So they're banning that altogether. So that's a step in the right direction. But as we ban that, like, you have to understand that these officers need to be reprimanded 100%. It was completely wrong. They executed the arrest warrant to the wrong home and then killed a woman. And it's the circumstances around this case is unacceptable. If it's not the police officers, it needs to be the judge who signed the warrant, and something needs to happen. We really have to say our sister's name, like Breonna Taylor. And in this week's news, it's just like nonstop, nonstop news. And it's interesting because every week we're getting a layered aspect to the degradation and difficulty of Black people, or like what the issues that Black people have in this country. And we go from the heels of COVID, and then we go into Black people being more infected and dying at increased rates. And then you go into George Floyd's death, or Ahmaud Arbery's, we have Breonna Taylor. And then this week we add our sister Toyin Salau, I believe. I hope I'm not saying her name incorrectly, and I apologize if I do. She went missing last week. She went to Twitter to speak about her sexual assault and molestation. She was brutally murdered last week, and they found her body, I believe, yesterday. And she is a avid Black Lives Matter protester in the city of Tallahassee. She, was speaking and invoking, say his name, say her name. You'd often see pictures of her with a megaphone. And so it's interesting because I believe she was actually also home insecure, where she, was looking for housing. And I don't know the general circumstances around her death, but she did go to Twitter to speak about her rape and molestation by an older Black man. And if this isn't like, oh my God, do we have to hit on the same topics over and over and over again? We talked about the structural invisibility of Black women last week. We talked about a few episodes ago, misogynoir. And this again adds another layer to the Black Lives Matter movement, the invisibility, the degradation, just the difficulties that Black women have. We are out at these rallies and these protests by ourselves at times. I've done that before. I've gone to a protest by myself, and it's not the smart thing to do, but you feel inclined and you feel connected to our Black brothers, and you want to go out there and support them, but then you look to your left and your right, you don't get the support from our Black brothers. And this is not to be divisive. This is to call to action our Black men. What are you doing in both your public and private lives to degrade the lives of Black women? This is from dating practices to what you do in the boardroom to how you protect Black women in general, and I really am calling all Black men out. This, yes, we all have a general mission to increase the quality of life and justice practices around Black people in this country, but we can't do that if we're not taking care of Black women, you know? And there's a book, one of my favorite books is The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It talks about the oppressed people will liberate their oppressors. And for Black women, who oppresses us but Black men, you know? And everyone else. And right. So we will liberate you, but that's gonna take us calling you out. And we have to do better. And you can actively, during this mission of Black Lives Matter, a general mission, you can work on the misogynoir you hold in your heart. And to think that you're not part of the problem would be whack. Like, everyone needs to be doing the inner work to break this misogyny that you naturally have. We need to protect our Black women, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's super ironic and sad that we were talking about this a few months ago. And so this is not a new concept, right? Like this is nothing new. And it needs to change, just like you said, Farah. Like it's long overdue for us to all look at our inner workings and to find ways to be courageous and be vocally self-critical and say, these are the things that I'm doing where I'm not being inclusive, where I'm not being considerate at any level, not just Black women, but in general. And so I think you raised a good point. And so, you know, I think it's time.
Yeah, it totally is time. I put up a post today about our, you know, rest in peace and power for our sister Toyin, and a previous classmate of mine at the University of Florida, he said, hey, can Black men actually get their shine here? Is this mission creep? And I said, I was like, sir, if you don't stop this, you know, I was like, Black women have the right to call their Black men out for their misaction and their lack of action around protecting and supporting Black women in their lives. No such thing as mission creep in this. Black women are actively out there. If you see Toyin and her pictures, she had a megaphone. Sis was out there every day. And honestly, if I can do a gentle like tap tap, I mostly see either white folks out at these protests or Black women at these protests. And if I can go a little deeper, it's usually like dark-skinned, beautifully rich, like brown-skinned girls that are out there with megaphones. And I don't think that is a chance, or as much as we are connected and we love our Black brothers, I think the people that are most insecure in our communities are likely out there fighting for this cause, but then also are likely most disenfranchised by what's going on in our own communities.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And it's not just like the desire to support, it's like the obligation, because there's a duality in that I am Black, but this is also my son. And I just think that connection sometimes goes missing on men, where they disconnect themselves from the experiences that Black women have. And it's like, that's your mother, that's how you got here, bro. Reality check.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But so may they both, Breonna Taylor and the other women that have died at the hands of police brutality or in the hands of misogyny, you know, may they rest in peace and power.
On the topic of solidarity, over the weekend, we got some terrible, terrible news in regards to yet another Black man who was killed by police in Atlanta. And I was telling Farah, it's funny, I was telling Farah, like, man, just a few weeks ago, like, this could never happen in Atlanta without the city burning, yeah. Right? Yeah. And not that it's funny, but it's ironic that, you know, it did happen in Atlanta. Unfortunately, the circumstances were a little bit different. But both Farah and I felt very strongly, like, there's no way in hell this is going to hit our city and we're not going to go out to the streets. So really quick, we actually want to play some of the footage that we captured while we were out protesting the death of our brother, Rayshard Brooks. So we'll play that clip now.
Reporting from Atlanta, from the Rayshard Brooks murder in the hands of police. We just wanted to be here as this is in our community directly.
It's just very, very heavy. You can feel the hurt. As you guys can see behind us, the Wendy's is in ruins. And there's so many different people out here. There's lots of Muslim sisters, lots of different folks out here supporting.
And it really feels like a public mourning. It's actually it's quiet here, right?
Yeah, it's eerie for sure.
It's very eerie. There's no chanting like you see at a typical protest. It really feels like everyone's hearts are super heavy right now.
Say his name! Say his name! Say his name! Say his name! Say his name!
so, going out there, it was so eerie, Afnan. I remember we were completely just silent, and it felt like a public mourning to be out there. There wasn't a lot of chanting. There was like maybe here, maybe there, but the whole building was incinerated, number one. Number two, there were flowers. People were just standing around. There was conversations being had, but it felt like, the air was so heavy during that time. And interestingly, I only live about 0.5 miles from that location. It's a Wendy's that I have attended, and had food.
We went there before.
I was like, food isn't the best. I like the one on Moreland. But anyways, that's besides the point. But I saw notification of the shooting on Twitter on the night of. And I, of course, initially when I hear any of this stuff, I don't respond to it well. So I often push it away until I can, and it's a place of privilege, but so that until I am able to digest it. It was just an eerie experience. I think this case has nuance. We have, our brother George Floyd's death that occurred during Memorial Day weekend that was cut and dry, right? It was just a gruesome death. Now we go into Rayshard Brooks, where the case has some interesting aspects, right? He was kind of accosted with questions for about 30 minutes about his sobriety. He did blow above the legal limit. He did resist arrest, and he did use a taser, right? But a taser in the hands of police, let me remind y'all, is not a deadly weapon. They don't consider it a deadly weapon. However, a taser in the hands of a Black man got 2 bullets to his back. The city coroner actually ruled that his death is a homicide. I think there are people who are uncomfortable by this. It's not clear cut. It's not perfect. But I think the main question is, did our brother Rayshard Brooks deserve to die? Did deadly force, was that the right thing to do in this case? And I think for anyone, I think they're going to say that that's unacceptable, And so, nuanced case. I think it's interesting that we started with this cut dry case with George Floyd, and now I think the universe is asking us, well, what if it's this? Does a Black person deserve to live? He did. He deserved to have his day in court. Point blank. Period.
Yeah, and I think something that is sad for me is I saw somewhere over this weekend that 120 Black people, men and women, have been killed by police in the last 20 days, right? So it's not about, and so anybody who tries to distract from like, oh, well, he had a taser, like that is the rhetoric that we have been fed over the years about what warrants life and death choices. And at the end of the day, all of you guys have seen, Caucasians, do far more reckless and dangerous things, right? Whether that's weapons or automobile, whatever the case may be. And a gun is not even reached for because it's not human instinct to shoot and kill a person you can identify with in terms of yourself or your humanity. And that just doesn't happen with white folks, right?
What got me was that the officer spoke to Rayshard for 20 to 30 minutes. Like he built a rapport with him and you still didn't see his humanity.
And here's the thing. I think, and not to get on a tangent here, but the first police officer, if you guys have seen the footage, the first police officer seemed like he was like cool, he was chill. He almost like even offered up to him like, are you gonna sleep? And then you just like sleep it off, whatever, right? And we all know it's a fact that others have been allowed to sleep it off, call somebody, leave their car, and walk away, right? So the conversation about the comments about, oh, well, technically he was still inebriated when he was driving is irrelevant, like miss me, right? Mayor Keisha said, there's a difference between what we can do and what we should do. And I think that's the point of the conversation we should be walking away from. This man was a father. This man was a husband. You see what I'm saying? Like he had children and he expressed his concern over returning to his children because he knew what risk he was in. And so regardless of what he did, it didn't warrant his life being ended. There's so many other ways that this could have been handled. And so I actually joined the Atlanta City Council because they opened it up to the public as it is in COVID. And so you could join through Facebook. And there was a lot of really good conversations about like what they're doing. And I think the only reason Atlanta is still standing, aside from the nuances to your point, Farah, is because Within 48 hours, that police officer was fired, okay? And then the other gentleman who was chasing after him, which ironically, the man who was closest to him, who was technically in more danger, didn't feel the need to pull his gun. That was still the first guy, the guy who I thought was a little bit more level-headed. Then the third guy who was in no imminent harm and decided he wanted to shoot down, like putting other people at risk. But
yeah.
Aside from that. And so I encourage you, you know, while we're kind of talking about, you know, proximity, right? Like we just had elections in Atlanta for positions that really freaking matter right now. Guess whose position was up on the ballot less than a week ago? DA, sheriff, right? Judges. And so if you also didn't take an opportunity to vote, like you're part of the problem. And so, you know, anyway, I'm kind of going off, but what I want to say was I'm proud that Atlanta took very swift action. I think the mayor and the police force knew that if they didn't respond very quickly, including showing the footage, because I feel like the community, the Black community, gets more and more agitated when they don't get answers quickly. Show us the footage, let us see what's going on, right? And keep us updated with the process and make sure it's quick, right? Like if nothing else. So, but I know that for you, like you were saying, like it's super close and that it's actually really, really close to the voter precinct that you had. Tell us about that.
Fascinating. So even from the Wendy's, maybe another half mile away is my voting precinct. I was working at the county hospital that day, had nothing to eat. I kind of wanted just to barrel through it. And then I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot there were all these other things that we have to vote for. So my vote in March really was just for the presidential primary, but nothing else. So I sat at the clinic when I was done with patients and literally researched the ballot for an hour, filled it out, my sample ballot, went there thinking, okay, I'm gonna get in and out, you know, I'm prepared. And I don't have to use my my Scantron technique of like going see, you know, a little Christmas tree, you know what I mean? Or voting for the woman. The ethnic woman, the name, right? So what I ended up going there and the line wasn't too far out. I was like, okay, this is doable. But when I tell you it was moving like molasses, and I said this, I was like, to the people that were around me, because we're having the social distance with mask, I'm hungry. And I was like, the voter suppressive tactics are real, you know, with the wait times were huge. All around the city. You said, Afnan, you waited 4 hours. I waited 2 hours.
Okay, I have to talk about this.
Yeah.
The voter poll location that I went to, right, opened at 7 a.m. I was there at 7:04. There was not even 100 people in front of me, so not like a super long line, right? Like normally, 15, 20 minutes, I'm in it.
Never waited that long.
Never a line. But for whatever reason, y'all, I did not get to vote until 10:45. 10:45. It was almost 4 hours later when me just getting into the poll. When I get in there, the voter volunteers actually confirmed they were getting conflicting information. First, they were told to let 5 people in, then it was 10 people, then it's they could use all the machines, then it's only some of the machines, then it's, oh, COVID concerns, then it's, oh, no, technical concerns, or whatever the hell it was. Yeah. And so you had elderly folks who were waiting, and even though they could cut the line, like it just took so long, even they were waiting, and it was terrible. And so that I went on Twitter to see that it was happening, and that reinforced like, no, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to wait. Let me put in my PTO and let me sit here. I don't care if I'm late for work. Like, this is important. And I know that everybody can't do that. Like, there were people who were leaving out the lines, but there were also some really nice folks who were like, you guys, this is a statewide issue. This is a countywide issue. Please make sure that you're not letting voter suppression get the best of you. You need to make sure your vote is heard. And there are people passing out waters. And in my mind, I was like, next election in November, I'm going to mentally prepare myself. I'm going to be part of those people. They were giving out pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, and that stuff doesn't sound like it matters, but it literally kept people from becoming agitated and just leaving altogether. So I so disappointed. And even the phone number that they provided to report suspicions of voter suppression, and to also record issues with vote submission, the line, they turned off the line, butter.
They're tired. They threw in the tile.
So y'all are this poorly prepared, and then have the nerve to like silence voices across the state. Like how do you do that?
Afnan, it wasn't across the state. It was Fulton County in historically Black and Democratic neighborhoods. It was.
I knew it hit us more, but they were saying that across the state there was other issues. Is that not true?
I heard it was mostly Fulton County. And so Raffensperger, who's the Secretary of State in charge of elections, Brian Kemp previously held that position and held the positional race. So yeah, and so there were issues of voter suppression around Stacey Abrams' campaign too, right? And she only lost by 50,000 votes, and there were issues around machines and voter suppression back then too. But yeah, Raffensperger said that he blamed it on Fulton County. Fulton County was pointing the direction at him. But, I think this was just a primary election. The stakes are low here. We're mostly voting for our own party, right? But in November, we can't play these games. If anyone's like able-bodied and can be out there, I think we need to like sign up to be voting precinct workers. I think I talked to one of my colleagues, he's kind of like a hippie at work. And he was like, yeah, I'm just going to take the day off next year. And like November, like the first Tuesday in November, the day's off. I'm going to take a PTO day. And I was like, wow, I'm going to do that too, if not absentee ballot. But absentee ballots, I just don't feel like I'm voting. I don't know. It's a great thing, but I prefer to be in person.
Here's the other thing with absentee ballots. There were a lot of issues with absentee ballots as well. So where we were, there's only specific locations you can drop them off at, and they weren't well communicated. And additionally, a lot of people in my line said that they had requested them weeks and months ago and never received them.
Exactly.
Never received them. So that's another thing to be aware of. But honestly, as somebody who is not super politically involved, and like I said, I've shared this with you guys, if you guys have been listening for any amount of time, I'm learning, and the more I learn and the more my eyes are open to like the bullshit that these folks are doing, it makes me more and more passionate about trying to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. I definitely did, what do you call it? The Christmas tree, where it's like, okay, pick C, pick D, just to say I was voting. And this year I really actually took the time to like research candidates, be like, oh, she wants to do what with gun laws? Oh no, sis, you out, right? And I think that's important. And especially now with social media, some really easy things is like to find a page that kind of consolidates that information. So I wanted to offer that tip to our listeners. If you're someone who's intimidated by politics, right? There's really simple like 2 or 3 point like PowerPoint slides on Instagram these days that'll help you be able to make more informed decisions, whether that's for your local elections or that's for the presidential election.
Yeah, this stuff is really insidious. These, people who benefit off of voter suppressive tactics are working very hard. There's a lot going on. There was after 2013, the Supreme Court ruled to like remove a section of the 1965 Voters' Rights Act that required states with a history of racial discrimination around voting to ask for federal permission before they changed any voting rights or voting acts.
I don't know anything about that.
They got rid of that because they said that was a 40-year-old rule, and we were like in a post-racial America. This is on the heels of like an Obama second term. So it is unacceptable. And the thing is, as soon as they like struck that down, Section 5, like people were turning in like new voter suppressive tactics like the next day. So typically we'll get like early voting problems, change in voting precincts. Like you mentioned, like absentee ballots can go to this one and not that one. Long lines that prevent people from like receiving wages, right? And so we've got to get smart. This cannot happen in November, not when like our lives literally depend on it. But I think as we wrap up the episode, I definitely want to just say her name again, Breonna Taylor, and we have a whole host of sisters, and so we all pray for them, and of course our sister Toyin, who was found this week murdered, and so we pray for them and their families.
And all of our other nameless sisters who didn't make headlines and didn't make news, you are in our thoughts and our prayers for sure.
Sisters and brothers, yeah.
All right, guys, that's all we got for you today. Please make sure you like and review on whatever platform you guys are watching. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Yeah.